While Janelle and I were in Branson, Missouri on our 30-day vacation, I was considering, well, Mark is at an angle, but let's go straight across to Kentucky and pick up on Ruddell's Fort. We'd always read about it, and we wanted to inquire as to what was really there. So we decided to go ahead and make a detour to our original plan and drove over to Lexington, Kentucky, spent the night, and then was able to do some research and was able to find ourselves at the intersection of Crooked River. This is the original place where the Indians and the British congregated. At that Crooked River intersection, we found this sign which showed that the Ruddell station was 2 miles away. We stopped at the service station and talked to a couple of people, and they said, yeah, we remember being there as kids, and you had to go up the river, and there's a vault up there. So that caught our curiosity. We drove up to that area, crossed the Crooked River, and we had to find the owner of the property to get permission to hike back in there. While we're at the property, however, and nobody was home. And so we thought, well, let's check the area out a little bit more and perhaps come back a little bit later and when the people are home. But we went ahead and drove up there on the property just to check out and kind of looked out the area and was wondering where the river was and where that vault would be. So we scanned it, took some pictures, and wiped our curiosity, and then we left. And we went back to Ruddell's Mill, which is part of the town where Isaac Ruddell lived. And we found signs and directions where everything had been in 1780. And they had a grist mill and spun wool and had quite an area. Then we drove on down the street and found the Stoner Mouth Cemetery, where we found the grave marker for Isaac Ruddell and his wife. This was very fascinating, interesting. And while we were there, a lady stopped by and told us that there was a little road not too far away called the Traboo Road, where it is told that Isaac Ruddell had his original cabin and it was being restored by Mr. Traboo. And so we drove down this old road and went up to the cabin site and found the remains of some old buildings. But the one that was being restored, and we found a gentleman there that was doing the restorations. He hesitated to let us in the house at first, but then we ended up spending 2 hours there at the house looking through it. He happened to be a friend of Mel Gibson, and Mel Gibson had been at this house, who made the movie The Patriot. In fact, this gentleman made this flintlock rifle and other rifles, and one of them was that Mel Gibson used. And also his wife made quills and different parts for the Revolutionary War paraphernalia. And it was quite interesting to talk to somebody who knew Mel Gibson that well, who had been there. They had pictures on the wall of the Traboo house and how they had dismantled it, which had been probably about a quarter mile from here, and restored it and went through the process of restoring this old cabin piece by piece. They didn't miss any original techniques or anything. They went ahead and did the whole thing. They had a storyboard there, which these are pictures of that storyboard of how they dismantled it and put it all together over a period of time. We had a fascinating visit with them and took down their names and phone number and address, and hope to someday get back in touch with them and extend our visit some more. The interesting thing is the lady that directed us to this location had also said that she had bought this house here, which was Isaac Ruddell's son's house, and I believe his name was Abraham. This is the bridge that crosses the Crooked River, and so after going through town, we went back up on the property. This was the barn that's up there that we drove to. We found this old stone wheel in the property. I don't know if it's authentic or whatever. But we looked down, and you can see at the far edge of the trees on the right-hand side there is where we found the vault. Right straight ahead in those tree lines is where the river is and the vault. We hiked in there and found this remains of some buildings or whatever. Found this kind of an archway, and inscribed on the archway is the date of 1845. And we later looked at things closer, and that was the date that the bones of dead people, the Ruddell Fort, were found, and by the owners of the land later, and they buried them in this vault. The vault has a steel door. The hinges are real rickety, and there's a sign above the door asking people to not enter, that it's very sacred on it. It was really kind of eerie, but no commercialization. But to think that these were the remains of those who died in the 1780s was an awesome experience to be here. And I hadn't read much about the vault in some of the storybooks that we had read of what happened here, where there were quite a few people massacred, and Mr. Ruddell and his wife were taken up to Canada and were later released 10 years later, and he came back and found his 2 sons, of which we're direct descendants of one of those. But outside you'll see that there's additional remains here of some building in the area, and I don't know what its role is, because it's right directly above the vault area on the hillside. It could be remains of the actual fort itself or some extended building. But we looked on around, and because that's where the vault was, and the fort was located on the other side of this pond, and we found the monument. Janelle did. I was looking other places in the area, but she kept on going over and hollered at me, and we found this monument that had been put in place by Daughters of American Revolution, and it was a monument to the Captain Ruddell. And so we finally had found this spot, and this storyline of this whole incident can be found in many of the books. So anyway, we made it and left there and took off, went straight north to see Mark after this great experience we had at Ruddell's Fort.